Welcome to Virtualize Everything. Today we're going to be taking a look at an operating system called Ubuntu, and we're going to be virtualizing it on Proxmox in order to easily evaluate it before we install it on bare metal. So I'm looking at Ubuntu today because I want an operating system that easily runs my Steam games and some of my other stuff without using Windows. I prefer not to use Windows in my life as a personal choice, and this might be a good solution for me. Now I know I can set most of this up myself, but this seems like should maybe be set up all that way without any configuration from me. So I want to check it out, try it out, and see if that might be possible. Now I learned about this operating system from this video, from this great content producer, and I highly suggest that you go over and look at this because he definitely had a take on this operating system that I won't be showing you today, as I'll be showing you basically the installation process and probably some light exploration and maybe even the possibility of looking at some Steam content on this operating system to see if it will install and run. Now, I won't be showing you how to do something like pass through an iGPU in this scenario, I don't think. We'll see where the video takes us. So here's the Ubuntu website, and you can notice a few interesting things like download free edition, which is something that you're not necessarily as familiar about in the Linux world, and they do have a paid version of this operating system. We also notice, unlike Windows, that it doesn't require a TPM module or secure boot. We'll look through more, and it is a plasma skin on Ubuntu, and that's basically what the website here talks about. So let's go over and look at how we're going to get the ISO into our Proxmox web interface, and then how we're going to install it. So I've already pre-logged into my Proxmox web interface, and I'm going to go over here to local, and then I'm going to go to ISO images, and this will queue up my ISO image screen for when I find the information I need. So back on the Ubuntu website, I'm going to go ahead and click download free edition and look down through here and see if I can find a download link. And it looks like we have a choice between a Windows 11 theme and a Windows 10 theme. We're definitely going to choose that Windows 11 theme. And I'm going to click on this button here, and it's going to take us to SourceForge. Now, it looks like we can download the latest version right here at this link, and here looks like another link to an ISO. Let's click on the link to the ISO, and that appears to start a download. So heading back, I'm going to right click on that link, and I'm going to copy the link address. Then I'm going to head back to my Proxmox web interface, and I'm going to download from URL. And I'm going to paste that image, and then I'm going to query the URL. And I get something called download. That's kind of sad. That means that we're probably not going to be able to use that link address. So let's try this one. I'm going to go ahead and save this and start the download because I think I'm going to have to use it. So I tried the download, I let it run through, and I get to another download window. Let's go ahead and try to copy that link address and see what happens here. We'll query that again, and I get download. So unfortunately, from the SourceForge website, once we get to this, we are going to have to download that onto our host computer. So I'll wait for that to finish, and when that finishes, we will be back with you, and I'll show you the process of how we're going to get it from my personal computer to our Proxmox server. So now that we got Ubuntu downloaded onto my personal computer, we can actually look at what it takes to upload it to Proxmox. In order to do that, we're going to head over to that Proxmox web interface, and the page that we already queued up, hoping to use the download from URL link, we're actually just going to click the upload comment. And here at the upload comment, we'll click on select file, and I'll go ahead and select the Windows Ubuntu image that I downloaded from SourceForge, and I'll go ahead and click open. Now, we won't be using the hash algorithm today, unfortunately, because I was unable to find a hash for this file, and I find that extremely disappointing. Especially, I know they're trying to push a paid version of this, so they're not entirely going to be along the open source type. I know open source and paid are kind of different, but they don't follow that same media. But the Linux world and usually generally has hashes and stuff that we can use, and I expect to see them, and I like to see them. So I was very disappointed that they didn't provide that for us. Now, they do have a GitHub that I stumbled across, so this source code is open source. So don't let me convince you that it isn't. Anyways, let's go ahead and hit upload here at our web interface and get this file uploading, and I'll be back with you once it's uploaded, and we'll take a look at what's required to set up a VM for this so we can start evaluating it. So when a file's successfully uploaded to Proxmox, you get a window that looks like this, and at the window, you'll see task OK if everything was successful. As you can see, we got the task OK and everything was successful. So we're going to go ahead, close out this window, and now we can start building our VM. To build the VM, we're going to head to the top where it says Create VM, and we're going to select it. Then we're going to give it a name. I'm going to call mine Ubuntu. Then I'm going to go ahead and hit Next. At this window, I'll go ahead and find my image. And since it's Ubuntu, I'll leave Linux and hit Next. System requirements. I'm hoping, being that it's Ubuntu, that I can use QEMU guest agent. So I'm going to go ahead and click that at this time. I'm not going to need a TPMU as said in our initial website, so I can click Next. Here, let's give it 100 gigs. I don't know how much storage I'll actually need, and it's probably only 32 gigs that you will need. But let's give it 100. Also remember, if you have an SSD in your Proxmox system, you'll want to go ahead and click discard. I don't have an SSD in this system, so I won't be clicking discard. Clicking next, it tells us we only need one CPU core, but I'm going ahead to give it 4. I want to make sure I have a decent amount of performance. And Proxmox always defaults to this x86 64v2 codecs. They say it's for performance. I find that I usually get best performance by clicking this drop down and selecting host. Now that might be my particular server, and there might be other reasons for leaving that on that type of codecs. Maybe if you had multiple dissimilar servers inside of a cluster and VMs were being passed from them, it might be a good idea to use that. But I have one server, don't plan on doing any high availability, so host will work fine for me at this time. Now I'm going to click next, and for memory, I'm going to go ahead and give it 496, which I believe is 4 gigs. Clicking next, I'm hoping that we can use VirtIO, which is basically the default driver. It is compatible with standard Ubuntu, so I'm going to assume I can use it. And if you need to remember to configure your bridge, I will have to for my setup, but you may not have to. So don't worry if you don't have VMBR2, you don't need it. Use VMBR0 if that's all that's set up for your system. At this point, I'll hit next, look through my settings, confirm them, and click finished. This will tell Proxmox that it needs to build your VM, and here's my VM created. So at this point, I'll hit Start and Console, and it wants me to press F2 to select languages. All right, so it started up very similar to a live disk with a full image that we can evaluate and check things out. I do want to go ahead and install this before I really do any evaluation, just because I want it to work through, and I feel that inside of Proxmox, there's really no reason not to install it. So let's go ahead, click Install System right here, and look at the installation process. We're going to use American English, so we'll click Next. New York looks like the correct time zone, so let's click Next. My keyboard is going to be in English US and it'll be default, so let's click Next. Partitioning, let's wipe the entire drive because we only really set up one drive inside of Proxmox for this, if you remember right. So we'll use the erase disk and we'll hit Next. It wants us to give us a name. We'll go ahead and give it VE. I'll tell it what it is. It's really not the best practice. If somebody went into the network, they'd kind of give them a good pointer. I don't generally do that, but this is kind of an evaluation, and it's just nice to know what it is when it comes across my router, and it's asking for a password. So we'll do that, and we'll hit install at this point, and the installation will begin. I'll be back with you when this is installed, and we'll take a quick look at it and see if we can get some Windows hardware that I'm interested in running on it. At this point, Ubuntu's telling me it's done installing, and we'll go ahead and restart the system by leaving Restart Now checked and click Done. So after our reboot, this is what Ubuntu looked like, and it gave us a pretty interesting login screen with what looked like a little bit of a different variant from the Windows 11 desktop, which is fairly to be expected. Let's go ahead, enter our password, and see what happens. Alrighty, so we're finally into Ubuntu, and we are virtualized on Proxmox, so system performance may vary with virtualization, but I notice the same general sluggishness that I find with most Windows installs. We also don't have an SSD, so that'll make user experience a little bit slower as well. I want to give those caveats noticed, but the first thing we see is a system screen for us to do some configuration here. I'm pretty much going to leave us in our default configurations for now, and I'm going to close that out. The first place I'm going to head off and try to find a start menu and some type of terminal, which I've yet to find here. So we'll go all applications. And what I'm looking for is some way that we can run terminal type commands here inside of this so we can try to do updates. Now, we did have something telling us to do updates before, and this looks like a console. So let's go ahead and try this. And then let's try running an apt update, and we're getting some permission problems here. So let's try entering sudo apt update in front of it. We'll give it our system password. And we were indeed able to update repositories in the same fashion that we would in Ubuntu. So we can assume that we can also upgrade them in the same way and get this operating system up to date. We are noticing that it is using Jammy, which I believe is Ubuntu 22.04, but you can correct me if I'm incorrect in the comments. All right, so at this point, we've gotten all of the repositories updated and any particular applications that needed to be upgraded done, and it's time to install some compatibility software so Ubuntu can easily talk to Proxmox. And to do that, we're going to use the command sudo apt install, and then it's going to be qemu guest agent, and then it'll be -y. And everything appears to have installed for qemu guest agent. So let's go ahead. We'll shut down Ubuntu, and then we'll start it back up. You can't do this with just a restart. Unfortunately, Proxmox won't notice the drivers starting up. We're going to have to do a full shutdown and then turn back on. So let's do that right now. And we're going to do that by clicking the Windows logo, clicking the power icon, and hopefully being able to power off the system. With the system powered down, we can go ahead and restart it by just pressing start and console. All right, so Ubuntu is now up and running, and we're definitely back at the login screen. Let's move our desktop for a minute and see if QEMU guest agent is working, and you can see that we got an IP address, so it is indeed working. Pulling it back into our field of view, we can go ahead and log in, and you can see everything's working. We're no longer getting error messages that we need to do updates. We can click update if we want, and we did have a few themes to update. Nothing major. Everything was able to be done by command line. You can use this update and discover utility as well for updates, which, if you like graphical user interfaces, is probably something you might want to do. Myself, I don't really care for this type of thing, and generally don't like the user experience on Windows at all. But we'll go ahead, we'll download these in the background, which didn't take any time, and let's do a little bit of exploring. Now, the thing is this is supposed to have a lot of Windows-like utilities already baked into it, up and running and able to be used. So I'm seeing a lot of like Linux things in here. Not much I recognize from the Windows world, but that's fine. I see Office, which is generally more open source and Linux type utilities and less of Windows. Let's check out Internet. We see transmission, some file sharing stuff, transmission remote, Wireshark, go to web browsers, interesting stuff. Now, the one thing that is pre-built in is going to be Microsoft Edge. Let's try to fire that up, see how long it takes to load. We're at 1440 right now. Let's try triggering it one more time. So we got one instance that did appear. Now, generally, Edge, in my opinion, is one of the worst browsers and logs behind everything else and has a lot of security concerns for my feeling, but it is a Windows-related browser, so it is kind of interesting to see it running here inside of Linux. And there we go, we got the second one that loaded. So whether that's due to the fact that we don't have any graphic acceleration, or the fact that we are running on Proxmox, or maybe it's the general operating system as a whole, it took a rather long time. All right, so we'll conclude this particular video here at this point. We did get Ubuntu up and running, and we've fairly looked through it, and it does have a pretty good Windows-like theme. We did not finish out with installing anything Windows, but we were able to do updates with the command line, as well as use the baked-in graphical utility for this. So it is working. We did get QEMU guest agent running on it and explore it a little bit. We can see a bunch of different type of more Windows related things here that we can check out. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you were able to explore Ubuntu. When we get back, we're going to try out Steam and Project Cars in the part 2 of this video, which should air on this channel, I believe, because we are doing it on Proxmox. But for that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, share, and subscribe to help virtualize everything grow. And as always, have a good night.